Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for being with us on this Friday night. I am Hannah Doba. I'm in for Blake Berman, and this is The Hill on NewsNation. President Trump now in Scotland, where he's set to meet with the British Prime Minister and the President of the European Commission. But on his trip already, the president fielding questions about the controversy surrounding the Epstein files. Will it overshadow this trip? And drones are at the border. Cartels flying drones across the southern border 60,000 times. I'm going to say that number again, 60,000. What does this mean for the safety of border agents and of U.S. citizens? And the battle with the Ivies. Columbia University settles with the administration, changing policies and paying millions to reinstate federal funding. Will other schools, including Harvard, follow suit? Also tonight, crackdown on homeless encampments. A new executive order making it easier for cities to remove homeless people from city streets. Which party has the best solution to this growing problem? But first, President Trump landing in Scotland just a few hours ago. There he is. He's scheduled to hold meetings on trade with leaders from the United Kingdom and the European Union.
We're also meeting with, as you know, the head of UK, Prime Minister, and I look forward to that. But we're meeting, in terms of a deal, we're meeting with the European Union, and that would be actually the biggest deal of them all if we make it.
Meanwhile, in Florida, Justice Department officials spoke for a second day with Ghislaine Maxwell. Of course, that's Epstein's longtime associate. Officials saying no topic was off limits in this discussion. Our very own Joe Khalil joins us in the studio. Joe, this is my first time meeting you, despite me talking to you every day. It's so nice to see you in person.
Likewise, yeah. Stay in D.C. as long as you can. Obviously, big day with this story. So this is the second day in a row now that we're hearing Ghislaine Maxwell, and the second at the Department of Justice, Todd Blanche, speaking together. Now, her attorney came out afterwards, and her attorney basically said she did not skip any question. She answered everything that was asked. And he also said that she was asked about, in his words here, maybe 100 different people, and didn't hold back on anything. So interesting to imagine what was said. He was also obviously asked about a pardon. And this is what her attorney, David Marcus, said about that.
Things are happening so quickly. We haven't spoken to the president or anybody about a pardon just yet. And you know, listen, the president this morning said he had the power to do so. We hope he exercises that power in the right and just way.
So President Trump also asked about that, and this is what the president said in response here.
A lot of people are asking me about pardons. Obviously, this is no time to be talking about pardons. But a lot of people have asked about pardon. This is just not a time to be talking about pardons. Todd will come back with whatever he's got. You're making a very big thing over something that's not a big thing.
So you heard the president there, not a big thing, but it is going to continue to be a big thing in the news as we wait for several subpoenas, all of the documents to come forward. Hannah, the story is not going anywhere.
I mean, it's one of the first things he was asked in Scotland as soon as he got off the plane.
Yeah.
All right, Joe Khalil, thank you so much for following this story. And joining me now is Florida's Republican Congressman Jimmy Patronis. Hello, Congressman. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. You just heard the president switch the subject to former President Obama when he was asked about Epstein. We're used to him deflecting a bit. I am going to get into the Obama investigation in just a moment. But first, I want to get your reaction to the Epstein files controversy.
Well, thanks for having me. The way I look at it is I was elected to work. And right now, because of a dead pedophile, Congress is at impasse. We've got paralysis. I've always been a big advocate in public service of full transparency. If the documents are there, release whatever you got. I do appreciate the president putting pressure on Pam Bondi to put pressure to try to release the testimony from the grand jury. But again, I think it's kind of silly that we're talking about a dead pedophile that is literally from the grave controlling Congress.
I do want to pull up a comment from your colleague, Representative Kat Kamak. She says, anything less than the full files is unacceptable. You voted against releasing the file just a few weeks ago. Why is that? I was reading one of your op-eds and you said it was an energy suck. But so many people on both sides of the aisle want to know what happened. They want to see that list.
So I'm not sure which vote you're talking about. We can get with that off camera. But the way I feel about the files, if there's a file there, release them. All I know at the end of the day, we can't get the people's work done. We literally had log jams in the Rules Committee, could not move bills forward because we have a razor-thin majority in the House. Literally, we passed the big, beautiful bill the first time by one vote, and I was part of the 2 members elected in April. So I'm hungry to work, but I'm also would like to get the chapter of Jeffrey Epstein behind us so we can do exactly that, taking care of the people's work. But I wish this wasn't the case. So whatever we've got, please release it so we can take care of the people of District 1.
This morning, President Trump was asked about a pardon for Maxwell. He said it's something he hasn't thought about. Do you think if she does cooperate with the DOJ, which she seems to be, according to Joe, and of course so many other outlets, do you think she should be pardoned?
I think a pardon is an incredible gift, and that is to be rewarded. I don't know if you give a pardon to somebody who helped facilitate the allegations of child pornography, sex crimes, abuse. So again, I think you got to give me the grounds of why she should be even in this discussion. But I mean, if she was a patsy and there's documentation to prove it, then yeah, this is the president's discretion. But, you know, at least I know in the state of Florida that Jeffrey Epstein has been convicted of terrible things. And unfortunately, and some people feel like it was a slap on the wrist. I probably feel like this guy should have been buried under the jail. Nevertheless, he is no longer with us, and I'm ready to start moving on because this is a subject that is not even good to be talking about because I've got kids. I don't like talking about this stuff. I just like to work. But if it gets it out, makes us stop talking about it, I'm good with that.
Former President Obama responded after the president said this about him. I'll talk to you on the other side, Congressman.
Okay.
It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined.
Now, President Obama did respond. We're going to pull up that full screen as well. What's your response to not only what the president is saying? I'm going to read a part of former President Obama's statement. Nothing in the document issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election, but did not successfully manipulate any votes. These findings were affirmed in a 2020 report by the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee, led by then Chairman Marco Rubio. Your response, Congressman?
So what I say is, right now, still in my mind, and I think probably most of your viewers' mind, the most powerful Democrat in the world is Barack Obama. He had spent 8 years in the White House building out an infrastructure through every agency head and then multiple levers underneath that. When you have the ultimate outsider like Donald Trump getting elected, you got to think of how deep the swamp got concerned about how their apple cart was going to be upset. So whether there's, true that he did this or not, there is no denying that he would stand more to lose in a transition of a Democratic to a Republican administration than Barack Obama did. So, yeah, he probably had those that were there that were going to be still running those agencies at the different various levels, trying to protect their ability to influence a Democratic agenda with a Republican presidency.
Congressman, I have about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to do some of these questions rapid fire because I really want to get to them. Alligator Alcatraz, I know the deportation flights have begun. Where are they headed? What do you know about it?
So as we start to see more cooperation from those countries or where these illegals came from, I think there is definitely an attitude of cooperation where Homeland Security is saying, look, you self-deport and you register yourself with the United States, we will at least give you the option to go through the proper process to legally re-enter the country. So I think the president is creating some transparency with those that are here illegally. You know what? Go back to your country, apply like normal. We'll consider your application at a later date.
I want to ask you specifically now about your great state of Florida. Governor DeSantis said this about redistricting the state. Let's play that.
The way the population has shifted around Florida just since the census was done in 2020, I think the state is malapportioned. So I do think it would be appropriate to do a redistricting here in the mid-decade. So we're working through what that would look like.
As you know, Congressman, Ohio and Texas are also working on redistricting. Just in the last hour, Governor Gavin Newsom of California said if these other states do it, especially Texas, California will redistrict as well. Your response?
So last year alone, 400,000 new net Floridians to the state of Florida. That's not quite a full congressional seat, but that was those numbers were about a year and a half old. So we definitely have more people living in the state of Florida as they are fleeing the states of Texas and New Jersey and Illinois and all these other places I'm never going to live. So, yeah, it's in the prerogative of California. California wants to redo their numbers. They can do it also. But we're seeing a migration, and we deserve representation.
Congressman Jimmy Patronis, really appreciate your time tonight, sir. Thank you again.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.
You as well, sir. And the Democratic National Committee has launched an ad campaign urging Americans to demand their Republican representatives to release the Epstein files. Here's one of those ads.
This is a serious issue. The highest volume of calls into my office have been about Epstein.
How will the Epstein controversy be talked about around the country? Joining me now to discuss the story that really doesn't seem to go away is Mark Short, former White House Director of Legislative Affairs for the Trump administration and former Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence, and Yemisi Egbowale, former White House Press Office Chief of Staff and Democratic strategist. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Anna.
I will start with you here, Yemisi. Should Democrats continue to hammer this topic?
Well, we should, because Republicans have been hammering it since the very beginning. I mean, Donald Trump Jr. tweeted about it consistently just up until earlier this year. So we're just following the same exact path that they've laid before us.
Hey, Mark, this, like I mentioned, this is a story that doesn't go away. The president obviously doesn't want to talk about it, especially he's had some wins lately when it comes to foreign policy, when it gets to the mega bill being passed. Do you think we should stop talking about this?
I think the best way to stop talking about it is actually to release the files. I think these are promises made of transparency throughout the campaign. There are suggestions made by Vice President Vance, by Pam Bondi, by others in the administration of a lot of nefarious activities by prominent Democrats. They said they would release the American people there in his position. So I think the best way to get it behind him so he can talk about his wins and things he wants to talk about is to release the files.
We know the Deputy AG questioned Ghislaine Maxwell for the second day today. He said, look, she's cooperating. She answered questions of about 100 names that were asked of her. This morning, President Trump was asked if Maxwell should be pardoned. He said, that's not something I thought about. Do you think she should be pardoned if she gives the information that the DOJ needs and she cooperates?
I think the last thing you should be doing is pardoning pedophiles. So absolutely not.
I feel like you might agree with that, Yemisi, but you tell me,
Yeah, absolutely not. The outcome of this shouldn't be that she gets to live amongst us in society. Absolutely not.
Now, Trump continues to try to change the subject. He deflects. He talks about Obama. He's been talking about the former Harvard president. I want to play a part of what he said in Scotland today about this very issue. As soon as he landed in Scotland, he was asked about this.
You're making a very big thing over something that's not a big thing. You should be talking about, if you're going to talk about that, talk about Clinton, talk about the former president of Harvard, talk about all of his friends, talk about the hedge fund guys that were with him all the time. Don't talk about Trump.
Yemisi, will this deflection work?
No, because none of those people ran a presidential campaign that had this as part of its platform. Every single YouTuber, podcaster that talked to any Republican said, this is something we're going to look into. Transparency is number one. And now those same comedians and podcasters that rally behind him and all those TikTokers are now on all of their platforms saying, hey, we delivered for you. Why are you not delivering for us? So it's not going to deflect Democrats, and it's certainly not going to deflect for his base.
Mark, do you think this treason allegation against Obama is going to work?
No, I think the reality is that I do think that the Obama administration politicized the intelligence communities in ways that is hard for our country to recover from. Having said that, there was just a Supreme Court case a year ago that Donald Trump was the lead figure in which he celebrated the fact that the president was granted immunity on all actions, including his actions after the 2020 election. So to think there's going to be a prosecution of Barack Obama, I think is again, what you said, trying to change the subject.
And President Trump did say this morning that Obama owes him. He said that repeatedly at a gaggle in front of the White House. Mark and Messi, don't go too far. Really great discussion. Thank you so much, guys. And coming up later in the show, lessons learned. Columbia settles with the Trump White House over anti-Semitism on campus. But the president is not done yet. Who is next on his checklist? We'll dive in. Plus, cartels, drones, and drugs. The rising threat along the border and how Homeland Security is fighting back. Also, restoring order or punishing the homeless. The controversy surrounding a new executive order from President Trump. Stay with us. The Hill will be right back. Welcome back to The Hill. I'm Hannah Doba in for Blake Berman. The Trump administration is expanding its fight against America's elite universities. The Wall Street Journal is reporting the White House is now seeking payments from other universities, including Harvard, for failing to stop anti-Semitism on their campuses. This in exchange for access to federal funding. The Trump administration is now reportedly in talks with Harvard, Cornell, Brown, Duke, and Northwestern. A person familiar with the matter told the Journal the White House is hoping to pull hundreds of millions of dollars from Harvard. The goal is to make Columbia's $221 million settlement look minuscule. Joining me now in the studio to discuss, and this is going to be a good discussion too, Jasmine Wright, White House correspondent for Notice, Julia Manchester, national political reporter for The Hill, and Lauren Wright, Princeton University's associate research scholar and lecturer and NewsNation contributor. Ladies, welcome to all of you. Lauren, I will start with you. You are a professor. What are you seeing on campus? Put this in context for me. What are people saying? What are you hearing from other professors and students?
It's actually pretty surprising. Look, I don't like the way this went down. I would have preferred a detailed investigation with findings, including for Princeton, and I feel we were preemptively punished. On the other hand, I talked to lots of Jewish students. I talked to students on the left and on the right. I've interviewed over 100 of them for a book I'm writing, and a lot of them say, I didn't vote for Trump, but if this is what it takes to make some common sense changes, I'm absolutely on board. And that was something I was frankly a little shocked to hear.
Can we pull up the endowments team? I just want to show our viewers how much these schools are getting, especially when it comes to Harvard. I mean, look, that's a lot of money. That $53.2 billion, $11.9 for Duke, $11 billion for Northwestern. Jasmine, do these schools really need the funding from the government? Why can't they rely on their endowments?
I mean, that's the question that the White House is asking, and they're going to continue asking as they bring in more and more of these universities. As we can tell, it's not stopping with Harvard, it's not stopping with Princeton, it's not stopping with Columbia. They believe that they are setting a precedent to really get control in some ways of what these universities are doing. Yes, they are banking it on anti-Semitism, but I was talking to one White House official who said that you could either be like Columbia or you could be like Harvard and resist and get all of this legal action, get all of these really kind of detrimental actions from the White House. And so I think that they are asking a question, and honestly, they believe that the American public is on their side when it comes to these large endowments. Do these universities really, really need them?
Julia, many critics say that Columbia buckled. Mm-hmm. We know schools, Ivy Leagues, and other universities and higher institutions are watching this very closely. Yeah. Do you think other schools will follow suit?
Well, it's interesting to see how Harvard has handled this. Harvard, which obviously has the largest endowment, where we could see
richest school in the world.
Of course,
right?
Yes.
Right.
Harvard has really, I think, stuck up in many ways to the Trump administration in terms of the battle over, its own autonomy, et cetera. But I think what the Trump administration is hoping is that this deal with Columbia, or this agreement with Columbia, will essentially be a roadmap for other universities. It seems like the administration is very hopeful about this, and it does not seem to be the last stop here.
I'm going to stick with you, Julia. I also want to stay on the subject of Harvard, because just today, President Trump specifically named former Harvard President Larry Summers when he was answering questions about Epstein. Here's what he said.
They should focus on the fact that Larry Summers from Harvard, that Bill Clinton, who you know very well, and lots of other friends, really close friends of Jeffrey Summers, should be spoken about, because, Jeffrey Epstein.
Most of the American public did not know who Larry Summers was this morning, and of course, President Trump brought him up. Why do you think he's now being targeted?
Well, look, I think President Trump's trying to deflect here, because there was that reporting that Attorney General Pam Bondi told President Trump back in May that he was among the names listed in those Epstein files, and there are likely so many more powerful figures listed in those files. But this is a story that is literally following the president from Washington to Scotland. It was one of the first, that was from the departure, that it was one of the first questions he was asked when he got off of the plane. So I think you're seeing President Trump there deflecting and really being, lamenting and being frustrated over this coverage of the story that won't go away. It's a negative story, and it's particularly vulnerable for him because it's the one issue that splits his political base.
I mean, the irony here, though, is that if he did move to release more files, obviously making sure that they're not identifying victims and things like that, people probably would can't talk about other people because there are just so many names in these files. And the fact that the White House is really having to be wrung through the mud to release any information, I think folks are going to stay focused on Donald Trump and what his role was or what his role wasn't.
Lauren, just a few hours ago, we learned that the Trump administration is releasing $5 billion to schools. This is K through 12, so it's not colleges and universities after freezing their funds. What does that say to you about the Department of Education and how they plan on moving forward?
It's very curious because at one point they wanted to gut it, then they wanted to get rid of it. But actually, I think what the Trump administration is realizing is it's easier to change from the inside. You layer, you politicize, you bend them to your agenda. And it's a very powerful tool, including the civil rights arm that enforces a lot of the things on these campuses that are totally dysfunctional.
Lauren Wright, thank you so much.
Thank
Julia,
you.
Jasmine, stick around. We're going to talk to you later in the show. Love having an all-lady panel, though.
We need a picture.
Yes.
This is very cool. And there's still so much more ahead on the Hill. We will take a bird's-eye view over the border. The rising threat cartels are posing to federal authorities. We're live in Texas. Take a look at this drone video. And President Trump's crackdown on the homeless, how a new executive order makes it easier for cities to kick people off the streets. That's next. Welcome back to the Hill, everyone. It's about 6:30 here in our nation's capital. I'm Hannah Doba in for Blake Berman. The Department of Justice is suing New York City and Mayor Eric Adams over its sanctuary city policies. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi writing, quote, "If New York's leaders won't step up to protect their citizens, we will," end quote. This lawsuit comes days after an off-duty Border Patrol officer in New York City was shot in the face by an illegal migrant. 2 Dominican Republic nationals are now being charged in connection with this shooting. Meantime, down at the southern border, a violent new threat by drug cartels. Our Jorge Ventura is live in Eagle Pass, Texas, with more on how drones are being used as weapons and tracking devices. Hi, Jorge. What's the latest there?
Hey there, Hannah. I'm right here, right on the border in Eagle Pass, Texas. Just a year ago, this was an area where agents would encounter over 2,000 people per day, but they no longer have those same issues or threats. They now are facing this new ongoing threat with cartel drones continuing to monitor their locations and to transport illegal narcotics and contraband into the United States completely undetected. Now, here in NewsNation, we've been covering this issue extensively, but now we have some hard data and figures on just how drastic this problem is. Now, during this week, there was a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing where we did learn from federal authorities that from July of last year to December of 2024, federal authorities did detect at least 60,000 cartel drone flights here along the United States border. That's an average of 328 Mexican drones flying near the border every single day. This is putting not only agents' lives at risk, but also there's also concern about the amount of deadly drugs that have come into the country undetected. Now, federal authorities here on the U.S. side say they are working with their Mexican counterparts to stop those threats. Take a listen.
We're doing things with the Mexican government, the Mexican armed forces and law enforcement, trusted, vetted partners. We're sending people down there to train them on drone exploitation and the principles, again, not the specifics, but the principles of effective counter-UAS.
And we are also learning that majority of these cartel drones are being flown in the middle of the night at restricted Mexican and United States airspace, giving the cartel drone operators just a massive advantage when it comes to surveillance, being able to locate those agents' locations here on the ground on the southern border. Hannah.
Jorge Ventura, thank you so much for that report. And I know that's a story that we'll be discussing for many months to come. Thank you again. 13,061. That is how many unaccompanied minors have now been located under the Trump administration. That's according to an official from the Department of Health and Human Services. And that sounds like a large number. But according to the DHS Office of Inspector General under the Biden administration, 320,000 unaccompanied minors went unaccounted for. So this is less than 5% of that. In November, Texas Department of Public Safety officers discovered a 4-year-old girl. She was found all alone with a little slip of paper with her name and a phone number as she tried to reunite with her parents here in the United States. Our Jorge Ventura spoke to that little girl's mother in January. That was right before President Trump's inauguration.
Everything we've been through would have been for nothing. All the risk my daughter took, it was a big risk since she was traveling alone, would have been for nothing. It would be devastating if Donald Trump were to deport me or deport both of us together.
Joining me now is the sheriff for Terrell County, Texas, Thaddeus Cleveland. Sheriff, always good to see you.
Howdy, Hannah. Great to be on with you.
This is such a hard topic. We were all discussing it during the news day today. I want to ask, what does a search for these children look like? Is the department involved at all? Have you had a hard time finding these children?
Well, Hannah, here where I'm the sheriff at and where I ended my Border Patrol career, we really don't deal with unaccompanied children. And what I mean by that is the vast majority of people we catch here are adults, and typically adult Mexican males. But when we do have a juvenile, they're typically accompanied with a family member. But throughout my Border Patrol career, having experienced unaccompanied children, the apprehension of them, it's a sad thing, and it wears on our agents and our officers along the border because, again, many of us are parents. Many of us have families. So if you have a heart, you care about people, it's really going to pull on your heartstrings. And it's really been a humanitarian tragedy what's transpired.
From your experience, Sheriff, what happens to these children after they're caught?
Well, so what we saw during the Biden administration, of course, many of the children were turned over to people that were just trying to get their hands on the kiddos, and they've been exploited. Other children were likely turned over to their parents. And what I mean by that, a lot of times the parents that are on this side, they don't want to give their kids their information, so they may give someone who lives close to them their information as a sponsor. But once the kids make it to that destination, then they'll be reunited with their family. Again, families, just because of what's going on right now with the ICE operations, they don't want to reveal where they're at. And then we have those that we have no clue where they're at. If you remember a couple of years ago, there was an operation in an Iowa meatpacking plant where dozens of juveniles were apprehended working for a cleaning company. So I'm sure many are doing, labor jobs within the United States as well.
You mentioned we really don't know where the children are sent, and I completely understand. But is there a possibility they would be sent to Alligator Alcatraz?
Oh, not whatsoever. And Hannah, I've said before, had the U.S. Border Patrol kept custody of those kiddos, we wouldn't be in a situation we are talking about the United States losing track of those 300,000 kids. When we apprehend somebody at the border, it doesn't matter if they're a juvenile or an adult, but the juveniles get the utmost care. We separate them from adults. We make sure they're fed. We, of course, make sure everybody's fed, but we really keep an eye on those kiddos, and we have to, and we have computer systems, we have checks and balances. So I can assure you that they're well cared for, and something like Alligator Alley, no, they won't be going to. The left may try to use that as a talking point, but it won't be true.
You mentioned a moment ago that some of these children that crossed the border, that got into the country, were exploited. How many of these unaccompanied minors do you think are in that situation where they're in danger or they're being abused?
Hannah, I would be just giving you a random number if I tried to quantify that. But I could tell you again, Chris Clem, who y'all have had on the show before, retired Border Patrol chief, he was actually working in the administration on revamping some of these policies and helping put together a task force to go out and find some of these children. And they've had some success, but it's going to be very difficult. It really will. And it's a shame that the U.S. government allowed this to happen. And hopefully we do a lot better from here on out.
And you said it correctly. This is such a hard topic to discuss. Most of us are parents. Thank you, as always, for giving us some context, Sheriff. We appreciate your time. Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland.
Thank you, Hannah. God bless you.
And coming up, President Trump slams the nation's capital over the issue of homelessness.
We've got to get the mayor to run this city properly. This city has to be run. I have the right to take it over.
How Trump is pledging to fix the problem and what that means for cities across the country. The full panel is up next.
Thank you for making NewsNation America's fastest growing cable network in all of television. Let's get after it. The place where left and right come to be reasonable. NewsNation, news for all Americans.
Welcome back. I'm Hannah Doba in for Blake Berman. If you live in or visited one of America's biggest cities lately, there's little doubt you've seen or encountered this growing problem, homelessness. It's an issue that has devolved into the seemingly unsolvable elephant in the room being this country. On one hand, do you kick them off the street? If so, where do they go? Do you pay for free housing or boost funding for shelters? On the other side, if you let homeless people set up shop anywhere, you will simply turn a blind eye to the crime, drugs, devaluation of property, and of course the trash buildup that typically follows. In recent years, the amount of homeless people across the U.S. has risen dramatically. In 2024, over 770,000 people in this country were homeless. That is an 18% jump from the year before, and it is an all-time high. The crisis came full circle today, right on the South Lawn here in D.C. Safe to say that President Trump was not too pleased about the eyesore just outside his backyard.
Right outside, we have some tents. I'm getting rid of them right now. You can't do that, especially in Washington, D.C. I talk to the mayor about it all the time. I said, you got to get rid of the tents.
A short while ago, the president landed in Scotland. But yesterday, he signed an executive order making it easier for state and local governments to remove homeless from the streets. In California, legislators are looking to cut funding for its main homeless program. California also has the highest homeless population of any state. It's where roughly a quarter of all homeless people in the United States live. New York, Washington, Florida, and Massachusetts, they all followed. When broken down per capita, right here in Washington, D.C., they have the highest percentage of homeless people. 83 out of every 10,000 people are homeless in the nation's capital. Does either political party have the answer to the social safety net for issues just like this one? Let's bring in our full panel with me. Mark Short, former chief of staff to Vice President Mike Pence. Jasmine Wright, White House correspondent for the digital news outlet Notice. Julia Manchester, national political reporter for The Hill. And Yemisi Egbewole, Democratic strategist. Hello to all of you. So I live in New York City. I'm here in D.C. This is a problem I'm sure all of us have dealt with. Have you noticed the dramatic increase in the last few years, Julia?
Well, I think it's been interesting here in Washington, actually, because during the coronavirus pandemic, I think we saw some shifts. I think there was a few years ago coming out of the pandemic when there was a lot of talk locally, and that sort of bled into the political conversation about the tents and surrounding various parts of D.C. McPherson Square, which is in downtown D.C. There's a park there that for a while had a huge encampment and it was eventually cleared out. So I think with President Trump and specifically him calling out Mayor Muriel Bowser there, he's certainly bringing that conversation back into view. And when it's the nation's capital or a city like New York, I think you see it more on the national stage.
Jasmine, tell me a little bit more about this executive order that he signed.
Yeah, well, I think the president is thinking about two things. He's thinking about aesthetics. Of course, this is President Trump. We know that he likes his aesthetics and he doesn't like to see the image of tents. But also, him and his White House believe that they have been given a mandate, and that mandate includes law and order and safety. And they believe that this executive order is included in that law and order mandate, cleaning up the streets, trying to do more to make sure that people feel safe. Now, I think that what we've seen from the deportation, although it's a very different issue, in theory, people like that. They like the idea that he's going to deport more undocumented immigrants. But we've seen his ratings go down when it looked like the deportation efforts have, potentially infringed on people's civil rights. And so the question is whether or not, if cities are clearing these homeless encampments, they start to look more aggressive. Does the nature of this issue tank in Americans' minds? But right now, the White House really believes that Americans are on their side about this homelessness issue and about the law and order issue that Donald Trump was put in office for.
Mark, both Republicans and Democrats claim to be the party of the poor. What is the solution here?
Well, look, I think that the president campaigned against the decay in the major cities from San Francisco, Chicago, New York, D.C., and I think this is a good political move for him. I do think that a lot of the executive orders, as the reporters on this panel know, really don't have much teeth legislatively. I think that they are kind of messaging tools. I think as far as a solution, I think we've seen that the continued drug legalization is actually not helping. And I think that many of the government programs have not been helping. I think there needs to be a much greater involvement from the private sector as well as from the charity community.
Amy, I want to pose the same question to you.
Well, look, clearing encampments without actual housing isn't real policy. And so he is going to have to work with some of the very mayors that he denigrates in order to make sure that this goes through. If you clear an encampment in McPherson Square, well, where do they go? In D.C., and I know this as a D.C. resident who's had to work in my own community, there aren't a lot of places for people to go. There's not a lot of transitional housing. So are we playing whack-a-mole and bopping one or the other? What I do know is that this really is a bipartisan issue. There are people that work in this city every single day, and they're worried about safety. And they're also worried about the valuation of their property as well. And so I think it is something that he's going to be able to get people on board with, but how he works with mayors on it, that's to be seen.
And this is with us not even addressing the mental health aspect that comes with this. I want to ask you about New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani. One of his proposals is to build homeless shelters in empty retail stores in the subway or at Union Station, which is across the street. I take the subway every day. I don't know how safe I would feel about that, but that is one solution that he's offered. But it is a solution. What do you think about that, Jasmine?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people like Zohran Mamdani are offering these kind of largesse solutions. You always question if whether or not they get into power. Does a rubber meet the road? Are they able to actually effectuate on some of these larger ideas? But I think Democrats, particularly after 2024, have voiced that they want to see Democrats oppose Donald Trump, but they also want to see Democrats outline what they are for. And so I think creating these big ideas is not necessarily a negative, potentially until people get into office and they have to actually implement them.
Julia, if homelessness is a top of mind, a bipartisan issue, so many people are talking about it, why does the proposed budget eliminate funding for it in California, but even in the mega bill?
Well, look, I think a lot of it has to do with, where else could that funding go to? Are there other solutions that could potentially combat homelessness? I think that's potentially an argument there. But, I just want to go back to Jasmine's point because I think it was a good one about Zohran Mamdani. Talking to a lot of Democrats, one thing I hear is that those big ideas that he talks about, maybe not all Democrats are on board, but they like the messaging of that. They like the messaging of affordability like that.
Mark, you've been laughing. Tell me why.
He's been chuckling.
Combine that with getting rid of NYPD. That's going to do great things in New York. Make it surely make it safe.
Solution.
No, come on. It's just reflective where the Democrat Party's gone today. That's where the energy of their party is. It's him. It's AOC. That's where their energy is. And so they're going to continue to embrace socialist policies. I think they're going to continue to leave our major cities in decay.
I'm going to let you respond
There's
to that.
certainly not less public housing today than there was 50 years ago. That's for sure. So we call for more public housing. That has not been a solution either.
I don't think that's where the Democratic Party is. I think Andy Beshear going to South Carolina and having a really productive conversation with African Americans and the working class shows that there are factions within the big tent party. And I think Zohran does have some good points, maybe when it comes to subsidizing grocery stores. New York already subsidized corporate supermarkets. I don't see any point in why he can't subsidize one in every single borough. He's got these big ideas. I say let him try it out because guess what? Bill de Blasio didn't do anything for them. Eric Adams didn't do anything for them. See what sticks.
This is certainly a problem that isn't going away. It's a tough solution to find.
Yeah.
All right, Yemesi, Julia, Jasmine, Mark, thank you so much. Don't go too far. Coming up, a look at what's trending here in Washington, including the former congressman who reported to prison today. And Elizabeth Vargas reports, that's next. She's talking to a dad, get this, who just proposed to an AI chatbot despite already being in a relationship with an actual woman. Are we entering the age of AI companionship? That's a good tease. I will be tuning in. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Hill. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Hill, everyone. I'm Hannah Doba, filling in for Blake Berman. It's time now to catch you up with what's trending on thehill.com. Trump's trip to Scotland. What to know? Trump is now in Scotland. He will be meeting with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer about a trade agreement. Alina Habba set to remain top federal prosecutor in New Jersey. Despite ouster by judges, Habba was President Trump's pick. A judicial panel declined to extend her an interim status, and they wanted to replace her. And everyone's talking about George Santos today. He did report to prison. He will start his 7-year prison term. And I guess you could say he kicked the door on his way out. Here was his final post. We were all looking at it earlier today. This is what it read. Well, darlings, the curtain falls, the spotlight dims, and the rhinestones are packed. From the halls of Congress to the chaos of cable news, what a ride it's been. Was it messy? Always. Glamorous? Occasionally. Honest? I tried most days. Back with me now is our panel. I mean, is there even a question here, guys? Julia, what did you think? I mean, what a bow before serving his sentence.
A very dramatic bow.
Yes.
Look, we were just chatting over the break. You know, I think he's supposed to be in prison for, 7 years? So we'll see if he ends up serving that entire sentence. But I don't think George Santos is done yet. I think he's setting the stage for something else.
I have less than 30 seconds. What do you think, Macy?
All that tap dancing for Trump, and he couldn't even pardon him.
Wow, Mark.
I mean, like the final post, sadly, he always viewed his public service as just a play act. And I think he defrauded a lot of citizens. And so I'm sorry the circumstances, but he deserves his jail time.
Jasmine.
I just pray that Andy Cohen gives him a Bravo show when he
There
gets
you
out.
go.
Please, Andy.
I mean, people are going to tune in. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being with me here on The Hill. And before we go, be sure to catch The Hill Sunday this weekend. Our good friend Connell McShane will be filling in for Chris Steyerwalt. Connell will be talking about the latest on the Epstein file fallout and the looming funding deadline with the Democratic Congressman from Illinois, Sean Casten. Be sure to catch The Hill Sunday this weekend on NewsNation, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. Before that show is Morning in America with me. Tune into that as well. Thanks for watching The Hill on NewsNation. We will be back on Monday.